March 9, 1971. An FBI agent unlocks his office in Media, Pennsylvania, and freezes. Every file cabinet hangs open. Every classified folder is gone. Hundreds of documents containing informant names, surveillance records, government secrets, vanished overnight without a trace. Within hours, J. Edgar Hoover mobilizes 200 agents. Roadblocks seal every highway out of Philadelphia. The most powerful law enforcement agency on Earth has been robbed, and they have zero leads, not a single fingerprint, not a single witness, nothing. But here's what Hoover doesn't know yet. The thieves aren't Soviet spies. They aren't professional criminals. They're a suburban mother, a cab driver, and a mild-mannered physics professor who just declared war on the FBI. The documents they stole will expose a secret so explosive it will bring down an empire. And the FBI will spend the next 43 years hunting ghosts. How did amateurs outsmart America's most powerful agency? And what was Hoover so desperate to hide? October 1970. Bill Davidon sits alone in his cluttered office at Haverford College, surrounded by stacks of physics journals and a growing pile of newspaper clippings about FBI raids on anti-war activists. For 3 years, Davidon has watched the pattern repeat. Peace groups get infiltrated. Leaders get arrested on trumped-up charges. Organizations splinter under the pressure of constant surveillance. Davidon knows this because he's lived it. The FBI has tapped his phone. He can hear the clicks on the line when he discusses upcoming protests. They've photographed him at rallies from unmarked cars parked across the street. They've interviewed his neighbors, his colleagues, his graduate students, all because he signed petitions against the Vietnam War and helped organize teach-ins on campus. But Davidon isn't an ordinary activist. He's a theoretical physicist who helped design nuclear reactors at Argonne National Laboratory before moving to academia. His dissertation developed new methods for optimizing complex systems. His mind works in variables and outcomes, cause and effect, the mathematics of risk and reward. And he's identified a flaw in Hoover's system. The FBI's power depends entirely on secrecy. Agents operate in the shadows, answerable to no one but the director himself. Congress has never held a single oversight hearing. No journalist has ever seen the Bureau's internal files. The entire apparatus runs on fear and the assumption that no one would dare challenge it. If the public knew what Hoover was actually doing, the illegal wiretaps on American citizens, the blackmail of politicians, the coordinated campaigns to destroy civil rights leaders, the outrage would force reform. The problem is proof. Without documents, it's just the word of discredited radicals against the most trusted law enforcement agency in America. So Davidon formulates a hypothesis. Somewhere inside the FBI, physical evidence of these crimes exists. Paper files, memos, directives. If he can get his hands on those documents and release them to the press, he can prove what Hoover has been hiding for decades. The plan is elegant in its simplicity and insane in its ambition. He's going to burglarize the FBI. He floats the idea to a handful of trusted activists in Philadelphia's peace community. Most think he's lost his mind, but a few see the logic. If you want to expose a secret agency, you need to steal its secrets. Davidon begins recruiting with the care of a man assembling a bomb squad. He needs people who can keep their mouths shut, people with useful skills, people ordinary enough to never attract suspicion. He finds Bonnie Raines, a 29-year-old mother who teaches preschool in Germantown. Bonnie has a talent Davidon needs. She can blend in anywhere. Her husband John, 40, joins as well. He'll drive the getaway vehicle. Keith Forsyth, barely out of his teens, signs up because he's angry about the draft and handy with tools. So handy, in fact, that he enrolls in a correspondence course on lockpicking just to prepare for this job. The team eventually grows to 8 members: a daycare director, a cab driver, a graduate student. They call themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. By day, they live unremarkable lives. By night, they gather in the Raines family attic, poring over maps and practicing their roles while the children sleep one floor below. Davidon's first task is choosing a target. He rules out major FBI field offices immediately. Too much security, too many agents. Instead, he identifies a 2-room satellite office in Media, Pennsylvania, a quiet suburb 15 miles southwest of Philadelphia. The office handles counterintelligence for Delaware County. It's small, lightly staffed, and surrounded by residential homes rather than government buildings. Perfect. For 3 months, the team surveils the location with scientific precision. They log shift changes, lunch breaks, weekend patterns. They note which agents arrive early, which ones leave late, which doors get used, and which ones don't. Bonnie pulls off the most audacious reconnaissance. She walks through the front door in broad daylight. Wearing a brown wig, thick-framed glasses, and white cotton gloves, she poses as a college student researching career opportunities for women at the FBI. The office manager gives her a tour. Bonnie memorizes everything: the layout of the desks, the location of the file cabinets, the brand of locks on the doors. Most importantly, she confirms what Davidon suspected. There are no alarms, no motion sensors, no security cameras. The FBI's arrogance is the team's greatest asset. Now Davidon needs a date. He needs a night when the streets will be empty, the residents will be distracted, and any noise from the break-in will be covered by something louder. He finds it on the sports page. March 8, 1971. Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier. The fight of the century. Every television in America will be tuned to Madison Square Garden. Every radio will be blaring the blow-by-blow. The burglars will have 15 rounds, roughly 45 minutes to get in, grab the files, and disappear. The plan crystallizes. Keith will pick the lock. The team will enter in pairs, fill suitcases with documents, and exit before the final bell. No guns, no violence, pure stealth. It's either brilliant or suicidal. They won't know which until they try. What happens when they actually reach that door? And what's waiting inside those file cabinets that the FBI is so desperate to hide? March 8, 1971. Inside Madison Square Garden, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier touch gloves for round 1. 36,000 fans pack the arena. 300 million people worldwide are tuned in by radio and closed-circuit television. It's the biggest sporting event in American history. 2 undefeated heavyweight champions, both in their prime, meeting for the first time. Every bar, every living room, every street corner in America falls silent for the next hour. Outside the FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, 8 figures huddle in the darkness behind a panel van. The temperature has dropped to 34 degrees. Their breath fogs the air. Keith Forsyth slips away from the group and approaches the rear door. This is the moment everything depends on. 3 months of preparation. Careers, families, freedom, all riding on whether a 20-year-old kid can pick a lock in the dark. He kneels, slides his tension wrench into the keyhole, and feels his stomach drop through the pavement. The pick doesn't fit. The tumbler configuration is wrong. The FBI changed this lock sometime in the past 2 weeks, probably routine maintenance, possibly a security upgrade after the Camden draft board was hit. Keith tries again, working the mechanism from different angles, feeling for any give in the pins. Nothing. He sprints back to the van, face white, and delivers the news in a whisper. The team absorbs it in horrified silence. 3 months of surveillance, dozens of planning sessions, the risk of federal prison, for nothing. But Keith remembers something from the surveillance runs: a side door, a maintenance entrance, old and rarely used, half hidden in shadow. It's their only option now. He circles the building and finds it, a narrow wooden frame with a simple pin tumbler lock, decades older than the rear door's hardware. His pick slides in, the cylinder turns, the latch clicks open. Then the door stops. Something heavy is blocking it from the inside. Through the gap, Keith can make out the edge of a filing cabinet wedged against the frame. From a nearby apartment window, he hears cheers. Allie has just landed a combination in round 3. Time is bleeding away. Keith runs back to the van and grabs a tire jack. Using it as a lever, he pries at the door an inch at a time. The cabinet inside scrapes against the floor with agonizing slowness. Round 5, round 6, round 7. Sweat drips into his eyes. At any moment, a neighbor could glance out a window. A patrol car could turn down the street. Round 8. The gap is finally wide enough. Keith squeezes through and unbars the front door from inside. One flash of his penlight. The signal. The team emerges from the van and slips inside 2 by 2. They have maybe 30 minutes left. The office is dark except for the glow of a streetlight filtering through the blinds. They work in total silence, communicating only through gestures Davidon drilled into them during weeks of rehearsal. Each member moves to an assigned section. File cabinets crack open. Flashlight beams sweep across folder labels. Black Panthers, Vietnam Veterans Against the War, Student Mobilization Committee. The names of 100 organizations Hoover considers enemies of the state. Those files go into the suitcases. Bank robbery cases, kidnapping investigations, those stay behind. The burglars are surgical. They know exactly what they came for. They wear surgical gloves with the cuffs taped to their sleeves. They've vacuumed their clothes to remove loose fibers. They've memorized the location of every piece of furniture so they can navigate in the dark without bumping into anything. Davidon designed this operation like a physics experiment. Every variable controlled, every contingency planned for. Except one. Round 12. The suitcases are nearly full. One final sweep of the office, and they slip back out into the March night. Across the street, a security guard from the county courthouse steps outside to smoke a cigarette. He stands there, 20 feet away, gazing up at the sky. The burglars freeze behind the van. For an endless moment, nobody breathes. Then the guard flicks his cigarette into the gutter and walks back inside. The van's engine turns over. They pull away from the curb without headlights. 2 blocks later, Frazier knocks Ali down in round 15. The fight of the century is over, and so is the perfect crime. But as the team drives into the darkness with 300 pounds of stolen government documents, they have no idea what they've actually taken. The files in those suitcases contain a secret so explosive it will bring down an empire and reshape American democracy. They won't understand what they've stolen until they open the first folder. What waits inside those documents? And why would Hoover rather destroy these burglars than let the truth come out? 3 a.m. A farmhouse outside Philadelphia. The team gathers around a battered wooden table, suitcases piled in the center like unexploded ordnance. Bonnie Raines pulls open the first zipper. Inside, hundreds of documents, dense with bureaucratic language and classification stamps. They start sorting by flashlight, afraid to turn on the overhead bulb in case someone drives past. The first files confirm what they already suspected: surveillance reports on peace activists. lists of informants planted inside anti-war groups, photographs of protesters taken at rallies across the country. It's damning, but it's not surprising. Hoover's FBI has been harassing the left for years. This is simply proof. Then Bonnie opens a manila folder marked with a word none of them recognize: COINTELPRO. She scans the first page and her hands begin to shake. COINTELPRO, Counterintelligence Program. The documents describe a secret FBI operation running since 1956, 15 years of covert warfare against American citizens that no elected official has ever authorized or approved. The targets: the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Communist Party USA, the Socialist Workers' Party, the Black Panther Party, the American Indian Movement, the Women's Liberation Movement, Students for a Democratic Society, the Nation of Islam, and dozens of anti-war coalitions. Organizations representing millions of Americans, all designated as enemies of the state by one unelected bureaucrat. The methods detailed in the files are staggering in their cruelty and sophistication. Infiltration by paid informants who report on members' personal lives. Anonymous letters designed to destroy marriages and friendships. Fabricated evidence planted to frame activists for crimes they didn't commit. Psychological warfare operations intended to drive targets to mental breakdown or suicide. One memo outlines a plan to send anonymous letters to Martin Luther King Jr. After the FBI recorded him having an extramarital affair, the letter, included in the file, urges King to kill himself within 34 days or face public exposure. Another document describes a campaign called COINTELPRO White Hate targeting the Ku Klux Klan. But the vast majority of the program's resources went toward crushing the left. A third file details the systematic destruction of the new left through planted evidence, fabricated criminal charges, and coordinated media attacks designed to turn public opinion against young activists. The burglars passed the documents around the table in stunned silence. They came looking for proof of local surveillance. Instead, they've uncovered a nationwide program of political repression that makes Watergate look like jaywalking. Davidon sets down a file and removes his glasses. His hands are trembling. For years, activists had suspected the FBI was doing more than just watching them. Now they have proof, detailed, documented, undeniable proof, that J. Edgar Hoover has been waging a secret war against American citizens for 15 years. The room goes quiet. Someone mutters that they need to burn everything and pretend this never happened. Hoover will hunt them to the ends of the earth for this. But Davidon shakes his head. They didn't risk everything just to hide the truth. The only way to survive now is to make the truth so public that silencing them becomes impossible. Over the next 48 hours, they photograph every significant document. They assemble packets for the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and a handful of sympathetic members of Congress. Each envelope includes a cover letter from the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI, explaining that these documents are being released in the interest of democracy. On March 9th, as Hoover's manhunt tears through Philadelphia, the burglars mail their packages from post offices scattered across 3 states. Then they do the hardest thing of all. They disappear. No phone calls, no meetings, no contact of any kind. They return to their ordinary lives and wait. Will the newspapers publish? Will the FBI connect the dots? And how long can 8 amateurs stay hidden from the most powerful investigative agency in history? March 12th. The Washington Post receives its package. Editor Ben Bradley reads the COINTELPRO memos and calls in his lawyers. Hoover has already contacted every major paper in the country, demanding they return the stolen documents and kill any stories. He warns that publishing classified materials could result in prosecution under the Espionage Act. The New York Times and the Los Angeles Times both received packages. They returned their documents to the FBI without publishing a word. But Bradley is a different breed. He spent years building the Post into a paper willing to challenge power. Publishing means war with the FBI. Bradley publishes anyway. The March 24th headline detonates across the country. FBI, documents reveal domestic surveillance program. Within hours, COINTELPRO is national news. CBS Evening News leads with the story. Members of Congress demand explanations. Civil liberties groups file lawsuits. The ACLU calls it the most significant revelation of government abuse since the Palmer raids of 1920. Hoover goes on television and denounces the burglars as traitors who have endangered national security and compromised ongoing investigations. Behind closed doors, he is apoplectic. He assigns 200 agents to the investigation full-time, making it the largest manhunt in Bureau history, larger than the search for John Dillinger, larger than the investigation into the Kennedy assassination. Every anti-war activist in the Philadelphia metropolitan area becomes a suspect. Every professor, every student, every suburban housewife with a peace sign bumper sticker gets a visit from stone-faced men in dark suits asking where they were on the night of March 8th. The FBI develops a profile. The burglars are almost certainly locals, educated, methodical, with inside knowledge of activist networks. They're not foreign spies. They're not professional criminals. They're ordinary Americans who somehow found the courage or the madness to rob the FBI. Agents compile a list of 400 potential suspects. Bill Davidon's name is on it. So are John and Bonnie Raines. In April, 2 agents knock on Davidon's door. They ask where he was on the night of March 8th. Grading papers, he tells them. Working on a journal article. The agents take notes and leave. They have nothing. A few weeks later, another pair of agents visits the Raines household. They show Bonnie a composite sketch of a young woman seen near the media office. The sketch looks like Bonnie, and like 10,000 other women in the Delaware Valley. She studies it politely and shakes her head. Never seen her before. The agents thank her and go. The investigation drags on for months, then years. Agents chase hundreds of leads. They infiltrate anti-war groups. They tap phones and open mail. In 1972, Keith Forsyth is nearly caught in an FBI sting at a draft board in Camden, New Jersey. But no one connects him to the media burglary. By 1975, investigators are almost certain they know who did it. They have a list of 8 names that matches the actual team almost exactly. But almost isn't evidence, and the burglars will not break. In May 1972, J. Edgar Hoover dies of a heart attack. He goes to his grave without solving the case. 4 years later, the statute of limitations expires. The FBI quietly closes the investigation. No arrests, no indictments. The burglars of Media, Pennsylvania, have committed the perfect crime. But they don't celebrate. They don't relax. For the next 4 decades, they keep their secret. They tell no one, not their children, not their closest friends, not their aging parents. They watch from the shadows as the documents they stole reshape American history. The COINTELPRO revelations lead directly to the Church Committee hearings of 1975, the first comprehensive investigation of U.S. intelligence agencies. Those hearings expose decades of abuse and result in the first real oversight laws for the FBI and CIA. Every reform that followed, every check on government surveillance, traces back to a physics professor and his band of suburban burglars. Did the FBI ever discover the truth? And what finally made these ghosts step out of the shadows after 43 years of silence? For 4 decades, the secret held. The burglars lived their lives. Bonnie Raines raised her children and became a child development specialist. John Raines kept teaching at Temple until his retirement. Keith Forsyth worked as a paralegal, then an advocate for the homeless. Bill Davidon continued researching nuclear disarmament at Haverford until age finally slowed him down. None of them ever spoke publicly about what they'd done. They had made a pact, and they kept it. In 2014, journalist Betty Metzger published a book called The Burglary. She had spent years tracking down the perpetrators, and 5 of the 8 finally agreed to reveal themselves. Bill Davidon had died the previous year, but he knew the truth would eventually emerge. Bonnie and John Raines went on camera for the first time, their faces finally attached to names that had haunted the FBI for generations. Keith Forsyth described picking the lock. Others filled in the details of the night that changed everything. The reaction stunned them. Instead of outrage, they received praise. Historians called them patriots. Legal scholars pointed out that without their crime, COINTELPRO might have continued for decades longer. The surveillance state might have grown unchecked. The very concept of government accountability might have eroded beyond repair. What they exposed in 1971 did more than embarrass the FBI. It proved that ordinary citizens, armed with nothing but courage and conviction, could hold the most powerful institutions in the world accountable. 8 people, a professor, a mother, a locksmith, a cab driver, took on an empire and won. Not through violence, not through political connections, through one perfectly executed act of civil disobedience that revealed the truth the government had spent decades hiding. J. Edgar Hoover had wiretaps, informants, blackmail files, and 50,000 agents at his command. Bill Davidon had a hypothesis, a stolen filing cabinet, and 8 people willing to risk everything on an idea. Hoover died in disgrace, his legacy shattered by the secrets he thought would stay buried forever. Davidon died knowing the experiment worked. The tension between government secrecy and public accountability never disappears. It just changes form. Every generation faces the same question the burglars of media faced in 1971. When the people in power abuse that power, who holds them accountable? Sometimes the answer is journalists, sometimes it's whistleblowers, and sometimes it's a physics professor with a radical hypothesis and nothing to lose. The FBI had the guns. The FBI had the badges. The FBI had the entire weight of the federal government behind them. But the professor had something more dangerous. He understood that the most powerful weapon against a secret is simply the truth, if you're brave enough to steal it. If this story gripped you, you'll want to know about another professor who made robbing a genius art. That story is waiting for you right here.